This broadcast of In Focus is being made possible through the support of Reed Health. Reed Health, right beside you. And by First Bank Richmond, with 8 locations serving Wayne County. First Bank Richmond and you, doing great things together. Welcome to this week's In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WCTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Thanks for joining me. Let me start off by saying thank you first to Chris Hardy, who did 3 straight weeks of In Focus for me, had some really great conversations, and I really do appreciate Chris stepping in and doing that. Somehow he may have thought that 3 was all he was going to do, but we'll be bringing Chris back into the conversations that we have, not just on social injustice and race issues, but some other issues we'll ask him to tackle. And the social issues that he has been talking about, the race relations in the community, those are conversations we will continue to have here on In Focus. I'll talk to various guests that I have, not just about that, but that is a part of what we have to deal with as a community. So we'll continue to have those conversations on and off, not just for the next couple of months, but into next year and beyond. We are a better community when we understand each other, when we work toward making everybody feel welcome. A couple of things to remind you of, believe it or not, because our primary election was pushed back so far, it's time to start registering for the general election. So if you need to check your voter registration, if you want to register to vote, or if you want to sign up to vote by absentee or mail, you can do that very easily. Just go to indianavoters.com. And you can do all of that in that spot, so you never have to leave the comfort of your house. If you're like a lot of people, you don't have to put on real pants and stuff like that. Also, if you were thinking about being a school board member, that's one of those elections coming up this time. The school board does not happen every year, but 2 of the 3 years. So if you're thinking about being a school board member, the first day to file was yesterday, the 22nd, and you have until August 21st at noon, which is a Friday, to sign up your petition and consent. Hopefully we got a lot of people signed up for school board. It is a very, very important thing. We have had conversations about reopening schools and what they need to look like. If you want to be part of some of those discussions going forward, you need to put your name on a ballot. So definitely do that. My guest today, I've had a chance to actually sit next to her while we've talked to some school board members, but I've never had a chance to kind of have her as the person answering questions. Girten, Chancellor of Indiana University East, thank you very much for joining me. I really do appreciate the time today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Eric.
You've been in academic life for a while. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like when May came and went. There wasn't a crowd of people. There wasn't the big commencement. You didn't get to say class of 2020 and hear, woo, which always happens. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was very hard, of course, for us, and especially hard for our students and their families. They've worked so hard, and our faculty and staff have been along the journey with our students as well. So it was very difficult. On the other hand, I think our folks on campus, our external affairs staff and so on, did a really great job of using Facebook as a way to help celebrate our students' accomplishments, and they pulled together some really wonderful stories, and we got a lot of people reading those and commenting on them. And so, we did get able to get the word out on a lot of the great accomplishments of our students. And so I think that was wonderful. And it's just so hard. I was reviewing some of those stories today, actually, and it just reminds you of why we do what we do and what great things our students and now alumni have accomplished and will accomplish. So it was hard, but we did what we could to continue the celebrations.
The pandemic obviously is not a good thing in any way, but it has kind of forced education, higher education, and education in general, maybe to look at some different ways of doing things. Talk about what Indiana University East in particular maybe has learned and maybe has gotten better at because of this.
Sure. I think we were already, Indiana University East was already quite experienced in online education. And so it wasn't as much of a heavy lift for us as the pandemic started, right after spring break, there was no coming back. Everything was going to be online. And I'm not minimizing the transition because it was very difficult, but for our campus, we have a lot of expertise. Our Center for Faculty Development jumped right in and helped those faculty who weren't already teaching online, and our faculty jumped right in and worked extremely hard and have continued to do so. So, the thing that's interesting, there's a kind of an old joke about academia. It's very hard to change, and we do have wonderful traditions, and that's one of the great things about academics. And commencement is one of those, as we just talked about. But when people just jumped right in, and the change was like that, instantaneous. I mean, it was just amazing how much change, and not only our faculty and our teaching, but also our staff, as you know, that we went from being everybody on campus to pretty much most people, not everyone, but almost all people except for essential personnel working remotely from home. And that was also a big adjustment on a dime. So there's that. And I think what's interesting for us, we are not a residential campus, as you know, so we don't have housing. And our students are very, very busy, and they work, and they have families, many of them. And so they're involved in many things besides their schoolwork. So sometimes when we have events on campus, we have good participation, but sometimes it could be broader. And so some of the things that we've learned were kind of a good outcome. We had some events that we did as Facebook Live events, and it was great because either if it was live or just things being posted on Facebook, I'm not the world's Facebook expert, so I'm probably saying some of those things wrong, but anyway, we had a lot of interaction, and many people were able to comment. And so you think about some students who may have some relatives at a long distance that would have never been able to come for something like, for example, our honors ceremony, where we honor students who are winning various awards, such as, let's say the outstanding student in nursing or outstanding student in business, so on and so forth. They may have never been able to attend those, and now they were able to, and virtually, which is great. So I think going forward in the future, as we come back to being more face-to-face, as that evolves over this next time frame, whatever that time frame will be, we will try to incorporate more options also for doing more virtual things, because that involves a wider group. So I think that's a thing that we learned very well. And we've had really outstanding participation in so many things. It's been great.
And that virtual piece, I think, helps you all in particular because, and talk about some numbers if you can for us a little bit. There is actually a pretty wide group of students who never actually set foot on this campus, maybe a larger number than a lot of the community really realizes.
Absolutely. And roughly, at least in the last couple of years, roughly, I would say maybe about 2,500 face-to-face students and about 1,500 online students. So normally, one of the things we did miss doing in the spring, we have a luncheon for our online students who are all invited, of course, to come for commencement, and many of them do. And in the past, I think the farthest student I've met in the past had come all the way from Saudi Arabia, and it's just kind of amazing to see students coming from all over. One year, our commencement speaker was actually from Tennessee. She auditioned online, and she was the person who was picked to be our student commencement speaker. So we do have students from all over. We have quite a few students who are stationed with the military, so they may be somewhere. I know we've had students from Germany, for example, and so they come back for commencement, and it's a pretty exciting time. So we did miss that, but on the other hand, got to see a lot of stuff online, so that was good. So we have students from all over the state, all over the Midwest, really all over the world, and all over the country.
Well, the relationship that you all have with the tennis organization is another one that has really kind of helped build that. You all have been really keeping those folks educated as they've tried to keep up a pretty grueling at times work schedule.
Absolutely. I mean, the Women's Tennis Association, we have an agreement where, of course, among our more famous graduates, Venus Williams, Sloane Stevens, we have some fine players, many fine players from all over the world who've gone through this program. And you're right, grueling is the word. I'm so impressed by these women. And we now have an agreement with the Men's Tennis Association, slightly different flavor of an agreement, but we've had graduates from that as well. And they have a grueling schedule of traveling all over the world. And in their downtime, if you will, as they're sitting there, they are studying and working really hard, and they mentor each other. It started with one, and it's kind of like a snowball effect where the other students see students studying, and they've just been a great partnership. So I know we've had several visit campus, and that's been very exciting. Attending basketball, I think it was a volleyball game, maybe, or a basketball game. I can't remember. It's in the Student Event Center, but it was great. Cool.
You talk about visiting campus. Let's kind of switch, because obviously we've seen it. The WCTV staff has seen it as we've kind of pulled in the morning at 9 or 10 o'clock and the parking lot's been empty, and we look around and, it's almost like being in the twilight zone at times or something. But at some point, there's going to be a bringing back of people to campus a little bit more. Talk a little bit for the community about what that is going to look like here, because this is a place where the community for years is used to coming, is used to participating. A lot of your students are from this particular region, and a lot of people hold meetings and things here.
Absolutely. And we are very committed to our community, and it's something we've worked especially hard over the recent years to make sure people feel welcome and come to campus, trying to host as many things as we can. And unfortunately, because of the requirements for social distancing and so on, we're going to have to be very judicious and back off from some of that this coming fall. Not that there will be no visitors. We still can have visitors. We're very much encouraging outside visits as much as possible, because, of course, this is a safety thing as with the COVID-19. So outside visits. We are going to be, of course, there will be staff on campus, but we are going to be, let's see, how do I phrase it? Everyone will be fully working, but everyone won't be in the office at the same time. So there might be an office of X that maybe has 10 people in it, and maybe a couple will be in the office one day and they'll be working from home for the rest of the week. Others may be in. So a kind of rotation within the offices so that we can ensure social distancing. So I would suggest if there's a particular person that someone wants to visit, that they phone or email that person just to ensure, if they want to meet with them. Many meetings will take place via Zoom or by phone, because, you can accomplish some of the same things. But if they need to come to campus, I don't want people to sort of come to campus and then expect to be able to stroll in any building and find a person. That may not be the case. So we don't want people to waste a trip. So check ahead of time. And then we have a lot of requirements once you enter a building, as you know, because you have to follow them. And one of the most important ones, of course, is staying 6 feet from other people, right? The distancing. A second one is washing your hands frequently. A third one is, of course, wearing masks. And we actually, for campus employees and students, we will be mailing cloth masks to them that can be washed and actually must be washed after they're worn. So they will get, each person will get 2 masks that will be coming to them. And we will also have on campus, if you arrive and you go, oh gosh, I forgot my mask, we will have disposable masks available for use. So we don't have to turn people away if they happen to have forgotten their mask. But masks are required. And another big thing is for, again, people working on campus to monitor their own health. That's a very important thing. Take their temperature regularly and so on. And I think probably one of the biggest things is we have such a work ethic of, I'm sick, but I'm coming to work anyway. I can power through it. That's a big no-no. If you don't feel well, stay home. We don't want anybody coming to campus who doesn't feel well. And students will be wearing masks as well, faculty as well. We have set up all our classrooms and change the room capacities so that students will be able to sit 6 feet from each other and be that far away from the instructors as well. So social distancing there.
Will that force more classes online because some of the classrooms aren't large enough to actually hold a class?
Yes, every classroom reduces capacity. There's no question, and some in an almost shockingly huge manner. And the example I like to give people is Vivian Auditorium, which many in your audience would know, having been to events there, holds about 300 people. I think 301 to be exact. I don't know where that one is, but
the chair on the back wall.
I don't know, somewhere. But the 301 goes down to 48, which is a huge difference. But a fixed seat classroom like that loses a lot of capacity because you have to think at least every other row and, so on and so forth to get the 6 feet in a circle around a person. So loses quite a bit of capacity, and all our classrooms lose significant capacity. So we had over 100 people on campus working in various what we call restart groups to look at all the different options for campus. We were already, as I mentioned, doing a lot of online teaching. Last fall, about 60% of our credit hours were already online. So yes, some other things have moved to more fully online. In other cases, faculty have designed hybrid classes. So some of the students may be in the classroom while others will be participating at a distance, and then that can kind of rotate. And people will do that in different ways that works best for their class. And faculty also, this committee that worked on this also came up with the priorities. What would be the priorities for a face-to-face class, knowing that we can't have all of them as we expected to. And that's typically things that are more difficult to do at a distance. And one example, for example, is ceramics, teaching ceramics. Everybody doesn't have a kiln in their house or a pottery wheel. There's some special equipment that really is not something that you might have. So those obviously are a priority for face-to-face teaching. Freshmen, first-year students, again, another priority. So a priority for our freshman seminar, although we've always taught online sections of that as well, at least in recent years. So faculty work through all those things to try to, everyone is very concerned with trying to provide the absolutely best educational experience that they can for students while keeping everyone as safe as we can. So those are the two priorities.
How does it change start and stop times for the semester? I know a number of colleges have talked about maybe just doing all online, getting rid of fall breaks, ending at Thanksgiving. What does the IU East model look like?
And of course we are all, we are one university, so IU has an overall thing that everyone is doing, and then within that there are some, there can be some campus-specific things, but in general, I guess the most important thing that all the listeners or viewers should know is that IU will be back in person. And in fact, the campus is not closed at the moment. You're sitting right there. So
I am.
You are. But it's very limited at the moment. So we will be back in person, but as I said, as this kind of we use the phrase de-densified campus, trying to have fewer people and doing as much outdoors as we possibly can. But the semester will start as expected on August 24th and finish at the normal time. I think the last day of finals for us is December 13th. That's all as planned, so there's no change there. And spring would start at the normal time. Spring semester start January
something
18th, 19th, I forget the exact date, and then go to the end, to the normal time in May. So there's no changes there. But the biggest change is no fall break. Now, for our campus, we didn't actually have an October break. Some campuses within the system do, but we did not. So that's no change. We took our break at Thanksgiving. The big change, as you mentioned, which is happening at IU as well as many other campuses across the country, no in-person classes between Thanksgiving and, in our case, February 8th. So the end of the fall semester and the start of the spring semester will be fully online for the most part. There are a few exceptions that have to be approved by me, actually, on our campus. But for the most part, that's the case. And the reason for that is that's prime virus season, and not just COVID, but the flu, right?
Yes.
And so you don't want people to have respiratory things and during that time. And we mentioned that although we're not a residential campus, our students do come from all over. And so we have student athletes, for example, that come from other states and other parts of Indiana. So they would tend to travel home at Thanksgiving and then come back. We don't want that to happen. And so another change is no spring break. Again, you don't want students coming back, potentially bringing virus. Don't want it. So
the beach people aren't real happy with you.
Probably not. Although I don't know if we have millions of students flocking to the beaches. But anyway, they do tend to travel and visit family and so on and so forth. So those, there'll be no spring break, there's no fall break, and then everything online in that time frame, end of fall and beginning of spring semester. So that's a change. And also, I would say that our faculty are very prepared, and this is part of what they've been doing, to help students in whatever way they can if a student does become sick, and not necessarily with COVID, but whatever they might happen to have, it happens, that there are ways that they can continue to do the work remotely so that they don't miss out on the schoolwork. So that's a commitment our faculty have made to do that.
Watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're spending some time with Kathy Girten, Chancellor of Indiana University East. You mentioned athletes coming in from all over the place. And in my time here at WCTV, we are housed on the IU East campus. I've seen the sports program grow from really just women's volleyball and men's basketball to men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer, golf, track, cross country. Men's and women's soccer started a couple of years ago. So that has become something that has to be factored into this. What is your sports programming like at this point? And what will people be able to expect? Because you've had some incredible success.
Yes.
Sports programs here at IU East.
We absolutely have our programs, and I will also, I'd say, a shout out to our students. Our student athletes are really excellent students. And just to brag on a couple, we've had students, several in our recent years, two in the last spring, I think, of 2019 and 18. We have an award for the top academic student, the student with the highest GPA that is graduating. And 2 years in a row, those students were athletes. One was a male athlete, one was a female athlete. And so the top academic student, and they went on to med school, ironically, both of them.
Wow.
So there was kind of, it's a very, it's a great testimony to how hard these students work to be outstanding in their sport as well as outstanding academics students. So it is very important to us. We have 15 sports, men's and women's sports. So it's important. The athletes tend to be very engaged on campus. They may be taking a fully online schedule, but they're there. They're on campus, and I would say they're here, but I'm actually sitting at home, so they're not in my house. They're where you are, on campus. And they're just very engaged, great students. So what's going to happen in the fall. We are part of NAIA. That's, we're not in NCAA, but we're NAIA. So we have to follow any NAIA guidelines. And then our conference is called the River States Conference. It includes 2 other IU campuses, IU Kokomo and IU Southeast, as well as a number of other smaller private institutions going all the way from Pittsburgh all the way across to Western Kentucky. So we cover Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia. So we've got athletes from all over competing within our conference. And we're just having a couple more emails about this today, where we are looking at the NAIA guidance as well as our River States Conference to see if there are any additional guidance we might want to do. We want to have fall sports, and currently that is NAIA's rule is that practices can start, I think it's August 15th. I should have written that down. And competition is not allowed to start until September 5th. So there are certain deadlines before which we can't do certain things. And of course we will follow that. And then there are many protocols for safety. And it's likely that we would start out for any indoor sports with no spectators, and then kind of, depending on how things go with the pandemic, gradually ease into small numbers of spectators, that we would work out a way that they would have certain seatings, they would be socially distant, and so on and so forth. And then it just kind of depends on how things go, as we can bring more and more people in, or it may go in another direction and we have to back off. And so the main thing about this pandemic is whatever anybody says one day can change by the end of the day.
Right.
It's a constantly changing situation, which again, we can adapt to that. So we've got a whole bunch of plans. We got plans, and we got backup plans, and we got backup plans as to, what we can do in different situations.
IU has a very strong public health component schools. How much have they helped in building the guidance that all the campuses are following?
Oh, that's a good question, Eric. They have helped a lot. Of course, we've got I think it's the largest medical school in the country, as well as huge public health programs, as you noted. So the President McRobbie, the president of IU, earlier in the pandemic, put together a restart committee that really was looking at, this was after the campuses, we went fully online, under what circumstances, when and under what circumstances, and if we could return to, quote, normal operations. And so this restart committee report, once that came out, that provided the guidance for then each campus to develop our own restart committees and figure out how things would look specifically on our campus. And it's very much from a public health perspective. And even now, I'm in a lot of conversations with infectious disease doctors and so on, who are part of various committees at IU that are looking at how we will deal with things. For example, if somebody reports being sick, and how we will deal with that, and how we will make sure that we ensure as much safety on campus as we can. So I'd say a very, very strongly and importantly involved in helping with the planning for how IU will deal with this.
Talking with Kathy Girten on In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11, Chancellor of Indiana University East, a place that has a history of being incredibly involved in this community. You came in and did it also, getting involved in the arts organizations and the foundation board and the chamber board, and talk a little bit about why you all feel, and why you as the chancellor feel, it's important that this particular campus be so incredibly involved in the community. And I mean, I see some of the faces here on campus, and then I look at some of the boards and people starting 501c3s, and I realize that they're IU East professors and students, but others may not. You all are incredibly involved throughout the county.
Thanks, Eric. Yes, I would say that, certainly as a regional campus, that's a core part of our mission. And even, I'm in, I guess now or after July, I'm in my 8th year here, which is hard for me to imagine, actually. Yeah. So, yep, just getting older here. But it's thinking back to when I came, and my installation, which was in the depot at that time, was still not being used. So yay, the depot is fully engaged now, which is great. And I talked about Stewardship of Place, which is a big piece of an organization that we're part of called ASCU, the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. And it's about 400 institutions who are very much like the regional campuses of IU. That is our purpose. We are educating students to be productive members of our community, and we are in and of the community, if you will. And I would say communities, because of course we serve 14 counties in Indiana, as well as counties along the border with Ohio, as well as I mentioned, we draw students from all over. So we are very engaged. And you're right, we are on a lot of boards. I'm on quite a few myself personally, but many of our faculty and staff serve on boards either where they live or if they live here in this community, Reed Health and Richmond Neighborhood Restoration and the Neighborhood Health Center. And it's hard for me to even think of the whole list of all the different boards that our various folks are involved in. Amigos, Communities and Schools. Those are just a few of the local ones that I know of. And I think a really key thing is we're in partnership with the community, and certainly through our various programs such as service learning. I mean, these are some of the things we did miss this summer, things like the 3rd grade reading academy. Now, some of these things have moved to different kinds of virtual environments, and people are working through that, but it's always been great. I myself every summer did a really fun paper quilting project with the kids from the 3rd grade reading academy. I think I've probably done that 4 or 5 years in a row and really, really enjoy it and miss seeing them. Had a lot of fun with that. So we miss some of those face-to-face things, but we're still involved and still doing them just in a different kind of way. But we really partner with the organizations, and it's important that we listen, and it's not a matter, it's reciprocal. You know, what can we learn and how can we grow and become better through our work with these organizations, as opposed to, here we are, we're from the government, we're here to help. It's not that kind of a thing, we hope, ideally.
You all are available to provide resources where necessary, provide assistance. There's a skill set that your staff, whether they're professional staff, whether they're faculty, whether they're even your students, have a skill set that really is able to help the community in various ways with not-for-profits and things of that nature. For those who don't know that, who don't understand that, what's the best way for them to begin to make a connection to you or someone else here at IU East if they're in need of help? And I think of Dr. Parker, who I know the Sheriff's Department reached out to. They were talking about data collection and those type of things, and being able to work through some things. And he has been invaluable, and they've said that publicly multiple times. How do people know what's available here in the community?
Well, you know, of course, we can poke around on the website, but sometimes we do have this Office of External Affairs, and headed by Vice Chancellor Jason Troutwine, and that is a very good place to start, because the Office of External Affairs, by their very nature, that's their, that's a focus for that office. And they have a good handle on who does what on campus, and also can, if there's some things that pop up and say, gosh, who could help with this? You know, we talk with my cabinet. We're a small enough campus that we know each other, and we can say, oh, well, so-and-so could help with this, or so-and-so can help with that. In some cases, it's through a disciplinary thing that you may know, and I'm thinking about college, our School of Education, for example. So, they're very well connected with all our educational partners, and And so that's a direct natural connection. But there might be some things that are a little bit more out there that people don't know. I would say contacting the Office of External Affairs is a good way to kind of ask about that. Or you can shoot me an email anytime, and I can try to push that to the right spot and the right person, I would say.
Conversation about diversity, inclusion, racial justice, social justice. Talk about how the campus has handled those conversations here, because it's not a new conversation in Richmond. Right. It's not a new conversation in the country, but it's a conversation that sometimes gets pushed to the back burner. As an institution of higher education, how do you all keep that conversation going here? How do you all deal with diversity here, and even to the point of being able to describe truly what diversity is?
Well, we of course have a statement about diversity, which defines it in a very broad way, including obviously not just racial diversity, but all, sexual orientation and so on and so forth, abilities, and it's a very broad, inclusive statement of diversity. But it's always work to live that statement and continue to improve. And we know that we are certainly not perfect, working on improving. We do have a chief diversity officer, and she reports directly to me, and her name is Yemi Mahoney. She's great. And so she heads our diversity committee. We have a diversity and inclusion committee. And when we were back more face-to-face, we had monthly meetings, but it's not just to have a meeting, but I think among the things that we have done through that group is really try to raise some questions, have some guest speakers, some training, some ways to really get people to think about their own potential biases or things that you may not even be aware where you have a bias that you just don't know. And we all have them in all kinds of ways. And so some of these things that really provoke these difficult conversations, but in a way that people can feel safe talking about it, and try to think of how, now I see, I think I do that. I didn't think about that. How can I learn, and how can I do things better in the future? So I think, of course, now we're doing some of these things virtually, and actually this is a good example when you asked about how doing some of these things virtually has worked out pretty well. We did have a conversation early in June about George Floyd and social justice and so on, and it was moderated by our chief diversity officer, but it was via Zoom. And we had a really good participation. I think there were about 75 participants in it. I think if we'd had a face-to-face meeting, I'm not sure we would have had that many. But it was, it was easy for people to get in and participate without having to, get up, get in their car, go somewhere, and so on. And the conversations, we had community members participating. We had police officers. We had the Richmond police chief. We had our police chief. We had, many people participating, Tom Williams, as well as our own staff and faculty were sharing their own personal stories. So I thought it went extremely well. And again, I think we had probably better participation than we may have done if we had done it face-to-face. So those kinds of things will be continuing, different kinds of trainings, things like that. Another thing that I'm very excited about is our nursing program, which is a highly competitive program. To get into that program has moved this year to a brand new admissions process that is called a holistic admissions process. And as well as looking at GPA, it looks at a lot of other different factors as they're looking to admit students into the nursing program. And the idea is to diversify the nursing program. So there are people who bring other skills and attributes to the program that may not just show up simply if you're just kind of going by classes and GPA. And so that process, which I really admire the faculty in that school, because this was the first year of going through this much more labor intensive process. And it happened right at the time of the pandemic starting. So they had to not only do a brand new process that's very labor intensive, but had to do it all in the context of a whole different working environment. So the faculty and staff in our School of Nursing and Health Sciences really worked hard on that. They had volunteers from across the campus who helped with that. It's very labor intensive, but I think that's a kind of putting your money where your mouth thing is. Okay, how are we going to diversify our nursing workforce? Here's a way.
The building that is kind of behind you, sort of, the Springwood Hall, kind of faces out onto an area that is called the Quad. A few years ago, you all started putting sculptures up in there. Again, kind of an outreach to the art community. Talk a little bit about why that became a thing for you here and how often those things change.
Sure. Well, I can't take credit for that. This, I think, was an idea from our Chancellor a while ago, Nasser Paydar. And so it had been in the thoughts and in the works. And when we renovated the Quad, a piece of it was to put these sculpture pads out there. And then we put in process a place to get the sculptures, which turned out to be much more of a process than one might think. But thanks to our great faculty in our arts programs, we came up with quite a good process that actually had a national outreach. Now, these are big sculptures, so for the most part, nobody's going to drag a sculpture all the way from California to Indiana. But still, we threw out a pretty wide net. And it's a highly competitive juried process, and it uses our art faculty plus some members of the community who help choose the sculptures, because there can be a wide range that people submit, artists submit, and then they choose the sculptures, knowing where the sculpture paths are and thinking which ones would look best in each spot. So they're changed out every 2 years. So we're okay with these for now, and then next year, now who knows with how things are going, but we should be able to, what happens is at the end of 2 years, the artists come and retrieve their sculptures and new ones are installed. So it's been very interesting to see, and you might like some, you might not like others, and that's part of the fun of it, is to see, who likes what and why do you like this one, or what about this one appeals to you or doesn't appeal to you. And I know I have had my own personal favorites over the years, and it's kind of fun. I really like Argyle, and for some reason in front of Hayes Hall for 2 years there have been 2 sculptures that have a kind of Argyle theme. It's really kind of funny. I don't know if the third time around we'll have that or not, but we'll see.
You mentioned a little bit earlier in our conversation Vivian Auditorium as a place, which is a place that even when we're running our programs from the vault, there have been concerts in there. There have been lectures in there. That is a space that has been used a lot. It's undergoing some changes. Can you talk a little bit about some of those changes, some of the renovations, and how have they actually been going? I haven't been able to stick my head in there during this time.
Me neither. I haven't been able to stick my head in either, but our executive director of IT was able to go over there to he had to do some work regarding the equipment, so he took a photo, which I was able to see. So it really was in need of a refresh, both just to look better. It's an important space for us, for our students, for our community, many community events there, for prospective students and their parents and so on. So it's important that it be updated. And then there are also, we use it for teaching, and also really needed some help with the sound system. Well, you would appreciate that.
Yes.
Very much, as you know, since you're often recording events there. So definitely needed improvements to the sound system, it just needed it. So while we're doing that, the chairs, again, getting very, not so comfortable.
They've held a lot of bodies.
Yes, they'd held a lot of bodies, so they were ready to be refreshed. The carpet was not great and starting to tear in some spots in a way that I actually tripped one day. So then I came in and said, we need new carpet. So, all those things came together. So that's the renovation. It's not no major change. It still will be a tiered room, and, the size and so on is not changed, but just making sure that the sound and video systems are much more modernized and upgraded and will work a lot better. Many times I've seen an experience where despite the fact that you try it ahead of time, you get a glitch with the sound, and that's very disconcerting for the speakers, as we know. So it'll be modernized, and it looks great. The photo I saw looks great. It will be ready for the fall semester. Knock on wood, we expect no difficulties with that. It looks very, very good, and they're getting the last of the technology installed now. So, and it'll be a very important room for us with our, because we have another project going on in Whitewater Hall. It's basically an HVAC upgrade. And so much of Whitewater is closed, not because of coronavirus, but because we are doing a big project, and the contractor has the building to do all the stuff that has to go on in the ceiling. Don't ask me to explain it because I can't. But anyway, that means some of our classrooms are not online in any case. And so Vivian becomes very important because you can still enter Vivian from the outside without having to go through the hallways of Whitewater. So
that's a building that was the first building here on campus. It's a building that has undergone some major renovations. The lobby was done a couple years ago. Got Vivian Auditorium going on. You got your IT, your big wall there. Yep. All of that has been incredibly helpful, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think to me the Whitewater Lobby is one of the most exciting things we've done since I've been here, in addition to the building of the Student Events Center. I think the Whitewater Lobby, it's just a huge transformation. I think, again, started out in this case initially as a way, because we had single pane glass there, so it was an energy saving project to put in more modern glass. We wouldn't lose so much either cold air in the summer or hot air in the winter. And it wasn't a pleasant place to be because the doors open right in it, and it would be like a wind tunnel with all of a sudden the winter air sweeping across it, so students didn't hang out there. Well, with the renovation and the changes we made, it's just become, it's just the place to be. So it's really been a great renovation.
Watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're down to our last few minutes with Kathy Girten, Chancellor of Indiana University East, kind of a wide-ranging conversation that we've had a chance to have with her. As you look to the next couple of years on campus, and I know you're always probably kind of looking forward. In your position, you have to. There have been more degree programs added. There have been renovations to the buildings. There's been the additional building. Talk a little bit about, if you can, what you kind of see in the future over the next few years for Indiana University East in its growth, either with more classes, more athletics, a deeper involvement in the community. What do you foresee?
Well, I think all those things. I mean, I would say that it's not just always more, but making sure that we're a couple things, that we have the right mix. What kind of programs do we have? Our Executive Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, Michelle Malott, is very involved in thinking about future academic programs, as you know, and our faculty, of course, are thinking about that all the time. Are there different ways, even with the programs that we have, that we can package combinations of courses that help meet the needs in our community more, those kinds of things. So that constant back and forth to see what is needed in our community and how we can best serve that. One example, from the past would be within our nursing graduate program, MSN program, after talking with Reed Health, there was a need for a FNP, Family Nurse Practitioner track in that program. So that's how that came about. So it's that kind of back and forth with the community, see what's needed and how we can work within either what we've got, or maybe there's some expansion in certain areas of new things that can take place. So there's that. I think a big focus on student success. Students start colleges as a case at regional campuses like ours all over the country, and things happen and life happens, and it's easy to kind of not continue. And so we really are focused on helping our students succeed. And that is has been a focus and continues to be a focus. And we're starting, it's just it's constant. Students have a lot of options now. And so there's a lot of what's called swirling nationally. Student will go from institution to institution, change, and so on. So it's a different kind of environment, and it's a constant need to communicate well and make sure students have the best educational experience that they can have. So a focus on student success is a key aspect of what we're doing.
As the conversation around this area and even in the state continues on the need for more people with higher skill sets, higher education, talk to the community about, from your standpoint, the importance of education for general betterment of the community of the state, because that push is not from here. That push is not from the institutions trying to get more students in.
Right.
That push is from the Chamber of Commerce, the governor, the business community saying we need a skill set here of workers. From your standpoint as a chancellor, when you hear that conversation from them, what does that make you want to do? How does that make you want to think about or change how you're reaching out to future potential students? And what are you doing for those students who may be coming up, particularly some of the high school students who may be ready for an educational opportunity at an institution while they're in high school?
I think it's, I think we're a democracy, and it's such an important thing. We need educated citizens, and there are different paths for different students, but I think something that's very important is to make sure that students understand about all these different options that are available. I meet so many alums who say they had no idea about career X, Y, or Z until they came to IU East, and their eyes were open and things were changed. They just said, I never even thought of becoming an X, or I didn't even know that this was a potential thing that a person could do in their career. They may have a pretty limited life experience of seeing what a career is. It's just like when you're a kid, you think, well, I'm going to be an X, Y, or Z. You don't know the wide range. And even now, there are so many professions that I don't even know about. There are things out there. So I think that opening of a variety of doors, and when we talk to employers, they want graduates who can read, write, and think. And that is a very important part of what we do. We're also we're out in the community a lot and talking to a lot of businesses who have some other needs as well. And then we try to meet those to the extent that we can. For example, they may need some training for particular employees. And it may not be a degree program at this stage, but they may need some specified or specialized training in some areas where we have some expertise that we can bring to bear on that. So, there are a lot of different ways that we can provide education in our community. As well as some, there's also pieces of enrichment, if you will. I mean, usually campuses in normal times, we are a spot for all kinds of performers to come. One of the saddest things we had to cancel was the IU Soul Review, which was the week of the pandemic, and they're so great. And to bring that to Richmond, that's a fantastic thing. But we have things like, I have been singing in the community choir that IU East has, which is a mix of students and community members. That's a great opportunity. Again, it's a little trickier in the pandemic times, but those are other kinds of things that we can bring to the community.
I appreciate your time. It has been a pleasure speaking with you, spending this time with you. I know that you've got a lot of things going on. I know things continue to change on a week-to-week basis.
Day to day,
you told me today may not be the same 2 or 3 weeks from now.
Exactly.
So hopefully we can catch up with you again. Keep the community updated, because this is a place where the community has come to gather for a number of years for various things, mostly happy and fun.
Yes.
So hopefully they can get back to doing that again real soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all you do, Eric.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more In Focus in just a moment.
We couldn't do what we do without First Bank, and how supportive they have been throughout the years.
I've had a very good experience working with First Bank. They have been there really with all kinds of different things that I do in my life.
We consider First Bank Richmond a good friend. They're there to help us sponsor our signature events. You always are out there to help each other out.
Besides the business part of it, we just get along really well. And it's beyond a working relationship.
Shine your light, we're better together. All the world we are one. We're better together. Going higher.
From the entire Reed Health team, thank you for your support. Reed Health, right beside you.
And as we get out of here this week, there are a few things that I want to remind you of. There will be a drive-through mask giveaway. Each car that drives through will receive a box of 50 complimentary masks. That's taking place on Saturday from 12 to 3 at various locations: Test Junior High School, Elstro Plaza, and Reed's Pace Center on the west side. That is being put together by a number of people, including the Wayne County Health Department. So a complimentary 50 masks if you drive through on Saturday. Blood is needed very, very urgently, so there is a community blood drive taking place on Monday from noon to 6:30 at the Reed Health Pace Center. Again, that's 2300 National Road West on the west side. You can schedule a time to donate blood at donortime.com. Richmond Farmers Market continues to thrive and go every Saturday from 8 a.m. to noon in Jack Elstro Plaza. They've also brought back the Twilight Tuesday markets. That happens every Tuesday from 4 to 7, also in Jack Elstro Plaza. Don't forget, if you are social distancing or if you just can't get out, you can use the Richmond Farmers Market online, so definitely check that out. The Girls Inc. 5K is taking place this Saturday beginning at 8 a.m. at Middle Fork Reservoir. You can still register online at wcchallenge.org. You can learn to play pickleball on July 30th. I probably really need to sign up for this at Clear Creek Park. That's happening at 5:30. The Race for Justice that will benefit Pro Bono Association is going to be going on this Saturday beginning at 8 a.m. If you have questions, you can give a call to 983-7357. Thanks again to Kathy Girten for being my guest on this week's In Focus. Next week, we'll have a conversation with Tom Williams talking about the NAACP, find out what that organization is doing and how they're affecting the community. Thanks for watching this week's In Focus. As always, I wish you well. Have a great weekend. This broadcast of In Focus is being made possible through the support of Reed Health. Reed Health, right beside you. And by First Bank Richmond, with 8 locations serving Wayne County. First Bank Richmond and you, doing great things together.